Welcome to 101. I'm Greg Bassett, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. They're all big. We've got one of the big guys in the House today, Delegate Chris Adams. Welcome, sir.
Greg, good to see you once again. We're in interesting times, so thank you for the invitation to be here today, and let's talk politics. Huh?
Well, very soon you'll be headed back up to Annapolis, and from everything I've read, it's going to be a really weird situation when you're up there representing District 37B. They're going to have you in two different rooms. So there's a lottery about being in the good room and the bad room. You can sit up in the gallery and vote, but you can't speak from up there. What are you anticipating just physically when you go back to the General Assembly?
Well, it's unprecedented, first off. They will have us split in half, proportionate to the membership in Republican Democrats, so we'll have the same percentage numbers. But I was on the lottery side where I'm going to be moved to the annex in the House of Delegates building.
So you'll be at the kiddie table this year.
Well, I don't. Well, I will be with our Speaker Pro Tem Delegate Sample Hughes.
Well, there you go. Good.
You know, it'll give me a chance to tangle with her and her role, if you will. But it's going to be interesting. First and foremost, our job is almost exclusively reflecting the values of our district in person. Testimony on bills, being able to stand on the House floor and defend Eastern Shore principles is what we've gotten accustomed to in my entire career, and surely for the history of the General Assembly. It's formed in a way that encourages participation, debate. The minute that they split us in half, I think we lose much of, in the General Assembly overall, not just me as a member of the minority party, but the General Assembly at large loses some of what makes us great, is the ability to stand on the House floor, deliver speeches, make position statements, and have someone who has an opposite viewpoint stand up and challenge those points. And so that back and forth immediately, let me just say, is going to be very difficult because we all come from different parts of the state. We're all defending those voters that voted for us and the principles that matter. So being split in two is not only interesting, but it's going to be eminently difficult. It's going to be very challenging for all of us once we get there, because not only are we dealing with unprecedented times and what's causing us to be separated, it's that the subject matter is almost historical in its tenor, in how important the issues are going to be. Surely budgeting, how we're going to deal with COVID response. And so these are things that not only are the most important subjects that I've had to deal with in my now 7 years in the General Assembly, perhaps some of the most important topics for us to tackle in modern history.
Yeah. Well, it's a minor thing, but having been up there and covered it, just getting a lawmaker for 3 seconds, getting in their ear, you see lobbyists do that, you see other lawmakers do that, reporter can build rapport and ask a question, get a quick answer. Yeah. All that stuff that makes it fun up there is going to be gone.
It's going to be gone. The Speaker, Adrian Jones, I think yesterday was quoted as saying, "We're all in this together. We really don't know what it's going to look like. We'll have to learn very quickly how to deliver relief to Maryland citizens." People are hurting, Greg. It's incumbent on us to, in many ways, put politics to the side, get our budget situation straight, understand where we are fiscally, and then respond in the only way that the legislature can do in making laws that help people. And so I believe that we're all up to that challenge, but we know going in that the odds of us getting it done quickly is going to be difficult, especially with the budget. So much to talk about. But that interaction you're talking about, the collegial nature of the job we do, does, I think, go away, and in its place, very serious work, and hopefully work where debate brings rise to the best in the state of Maryland, that we win debates on its merit, and that has to happen. And so, maybe when it's over, maybe this time next year, we can look back and reflect on what this was like, and we can go back to our old-fashioned way of conducting business.
We interviewed Peter Franchot last week via Zoom, and he implored the governor to tap into the rainy day fund. And just yesterday, the governor said he was going to do that. What's your reaction to his decision?
We are in a rainy day.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so I think that the answer is, directly and most importantly, that we need to get relief to the citizens. I was actually watching the comptroller today. The Board of Revenue Estimates was meeting as we were getting ready to be interviewed, and we know that 11,600 sales tax accounts have closed. Those are businesses that are no longer doing business, no longer in need of collecting sales tax revenue. These are small businesses. If you think back to when then candidate Hogan was running for office, he was championing the small businesses, of which 8,000 had gone out of business over O'Malley's term.
Right.
We're talking about 11,000 accounts over a period of months, and the year's not over yet. So I think we are clearly in a position where we need to look at the citizens, the folks that are unemployed, and if you can go back to how do you fix those challenges, it's going to be in somehow prop up and support the business community at large, and really, if you listen to what the comptroller is saying, there's some validity to the idea that money needs to be spent. To the degree we do that, or to the degree we can do that, whether we're willing to go in and borrow money to really make a large impact is frankly up to the legislature. But to this point, I would agree generally that we are in the middle of a recession. I know we can see it in our business. I'm a private business owner, and
Right, you have a floor covering and carpet business.
consumer behavior is different, and it should be really. But what I'll also tell you as a small business that there are winners and losers. I mean, Amazon clearly is a major winner from people staying at home who still want to try to live a normal life. Home Depot, Lowe's, construction trades, the Walgreens, CVS. If you're a grocery store, you're doing very well. And to the benefit of the state, some of our the worst of what we thought was going to happen fiscally actually did not happen, because people are spending a lot more money on goods. Service spending, like getting work done in your house, is going down. But people are spending money. They sure, at least in the short run. So we have a chance, I think, if we're smart about getting relief where it matters, where it can most directly impact and help citizens, is very important. And it does come down to, we are in a rainy day and need to treat it as such.
What do businesses need from the state? Do they need cash? Do they need loans? Do they need a tax cut? What would benefit businesses to get through till the vaccine takes effect?
Right. So I'm in the minority party. I'm chairing the work group. So we've divided ourselves in different subject matter, but I'm chairing the work group on economic policy and what things we're going to bring to the legislature. And I can say to you very simply that we are looking at how do we get tax credits, bring tax relief to businesses. It's going to be hard for the government to actually write a check and say here to the businesses on a state level. On the federal level, they did it through the PPP program, but on a state level, the very best and most direct way we can help small businesses in a financial way is to do it through tax relief. And so we've got a handful of bills. These aren't vetted yet, but just know that we've targeted almost every agenda item within our group through the lens of tax relief. We've got in the small business sector some real industries that are struggling, and even tax relief's not going to get it done. Think about the restaurants, and it is encouraging for the governor yesterday when he was talking to speak directly to the restaurants that he didn't feel like we needed to be closing the restaurants, because frankly we've lost thousands upon thousands of restaurants. They're gone. They're not coming back. And many of those that are still in business who are counting on outdoor seating, for example, and trying to figure out how they do business with reduced capacity. If there's another shutdown like they've frankly done in Baltimore City,
right?
We're in for a world of hurt, because a restaurant, people's willingness to show up at the restaurant, government having this idea that restaurants are an entity that needs to be targeted, which I disagree with in this sense, but that we've got some direct challenges, and I think that the long answer to your question then is that the government is not in the very best position to deliver relief. Ultimately, it's consumers who are willing to go back into a retailer's front door, not necessarily online, but to be able to conduct commerce in a traditional way. That then comes back to what would make somebody comfortable to do those sort of things, and perception's reality. Right now, we've got a virus that's obviously affecting thousands upon thousands of people, and you can't make light of that. You need to seriously, as a legislator, understand where people's comfort zone is, what they're willing to do, what they're looking for the government to do for them. But just know that it's not the fault of the business, and it's really not the fault of the citizen who's on unemployment that we've done this. The government has created this. Let's just be honest about it.
Right.
So, we need to unwind this sooner rather than later. To the extent that we can use the rainy day fund, deliver tax relief, we should be doing those things, and we will. We will. We have to.
Right.
Right.
The feedback I get from readers, it's interesting because the restaurant owners are all very upset, but most of the businesses are satisfied with the governor's decisions. But probably the biggest negative thing that I get from readers is I think this pandemic has exposed some problems perhaps in the unemployment system. Now it's been overwhelmed, and I'm sure that's an issue, but are you hearing about some flaws in the unemployment process?
Greg, we knew in my first year coming into office, I think technology was extremely antiquated, and I don't need to make light of this, but when I was a child in the 80s, I had a Texas Instruments TI-99 4A computer. I learned how to code in BASIC back when I was a child on this, and I remember the green screen and the things. And I don't think I'm overstating it when I say that we're using technology that's so very antiquated. I might be off on that, but I don't think so, because if we had modern technology in place, I think we would be moving much more in an expedited fashion on unemployment claims, and it has to be. I mean, we probably shouldn't have let it get to this point for as long as we have, and that's not an administration issue. This is a issue that has transcended multiple administrations. Something like this is the worst case scenario when you don't have the ability to help people. That's what unemployment is about. People pay their own money into unemployment, as do employers, and we try to have that as a safeguard. And when it's not there, it's frustrating. Greg, every legislator in the state of Maryland, and I'll speak for myself and just add to the fact that our number one constituent issue is dealing with calls from citizens who have not been able to get relief through unemployment. They're not getting timely answers from the Department of Labor, and we end up being, because we know we answer the phone. My office answers the phone. We're a real entity,
right?
Real people, and if nothing else, we're empathizing with the folks, but we're also on an individual level, especially when we see things where people are falling through the cracks, picking up the phone, talking to people at the Department of Labor and saying, look, this is inexcusable. We need to be trying to resolve and or communicate with people, and waiting 6 to 8 weeks, which is I think the standard right now,
right,
just is not good. Moving forward and through this pandemic, it can't just be the Department of Labor and unemployment where the government is lagging in technology. And so, anybody who's worth their weight in salt looking at what's happened with the Department of Labor and is in a leadership position where we can make laws, we can spend money, probably needs to go through a top-down review of all technology and really try to make sure these things don't happen just for unemployment, because we need to fix that, and we will, no doubt. But it could be Department of Health, Department of Commerce,
right?
You name it.
I have been fascinated. People who are unemployed or people who are not in the habit of being unemployed. It's the first time it's ever happened for them. And how many people have told me they did not know that the state ran the unemployment system? They thought the federal government ran it. Just a basic thing that you think everyone knows, and people don't know these things.
Well, they're both right, because it's a federal government
right.
Program that is administered by the state. So some of the real consternation then is, well, is the federal government doing its part? And not to get too deep into that
sure.
conversation, but let me just say that the unemployment issue is not just a Maryland issue, and you're right to bring this up, because I think that the country having to deal with this to certain degrees. So you might hear different states are better positioned to
right.
Facilitate the payment to citizens. But I don't know that Maryland is any worse than
right.
The best here. I think we're probably right there with every other state that's in place. Doesn't mean it's right, and
Yeah.
doesn't make it good for the people. Because I've talked to these folks. I mean, they yes are very upset and they're frustrated, and no, there's no answer that's ever going to fix that because, like you said, when somebody's making a call for an entitlement, and unemployment is a guaranteed benefit that citizens need when they're bridging different jobs. And so the answer can't be no. I mean,
Right.
no, we can't help you, or no, we can't give you the money, now. I'm on the committee of jurisdiction, and unemployment subject is, I'm strong in that subject matter and know the issues. And one of the challenges moving forward is going to be the unemployment trust fund.
Right.
So there is a sum of money that sits there as a savings account, as a backdrop, normally somewhere around 1.2 to 1.6 billion dollars. And what's going to happen is clearly we're going to draw that reserve down. And so how do you replenish it? And so the short answer is when we have these issues, you raise rates on the employers. And so many savvy business owners, certainly Chamber of Commerce's, have identified this issue as a future issue as we're trying to get a recovery through what's going to be the answer to this long-term draw on unemployment. And so looking at the employer and saying, okay, your rates are going to go through the roof. That's nothing more, nothing less than a tax
Right.
that businesses likely will not be able to afford when you. These are incremental expenses that are coming forward. But I'm very concerned. These are things that you and I might not talk about on a daily basis, but by this time next year, when you and I are reviewing what's going to happen in what will be my final year of my second term,
Right.
we'll be talking about how did we resolve, this additional tax on employers. And I think we'll have to deliver state and or federal aid to resolve it.
With your economic development responsibilities through your committees, there's an issue in Salisbury for a tax plan, and we're going to need enabling legislation. I assume you're probably going to be a point man on this for the Horizon program, for this tax district, for the big ticket items that are going to be built downtown. Any thoughts on that one?
Well, I'm trying to get up to speed. I did talk to the Greater Salisbury Committee. Happy to meet with Mike Dunn. He laid out the agenda, the multifaceted agenda for
Right.
The business community for which he represents. And I'm a member of Greater Salisbury Committee as a dues-paying member, and so I recognize the need for economic development, how we've gotten so far in the city of Salisbury through the help of the government, and how now we're seeing the need for using the infrastructure that's been improved, been set in place. And so, the deficit that I have at this point is that because it's fairly new to me, the vernacular, the Horizon tax, what does it do? How are we funding it? Who's going to need it?
Right.
Right. So these are questions that surely I'm going to need to have answers for, because we need to go up to Annapolis and sell what I think is going to be a very narrow, tax credit program. At the same time that we're trying to deliver broad,
Right.
universal tax credits and tax relief to the business community at large. I don't know how the General Assembly is going to, receive that. My charge as a legislator is to reach out to developers, which I've done. Try to understand why and how this type of tax credit can make a difference, and then do our level best to bring local enabling legislation. Let me just end by saying most local legislation gets passed with strong local support, right? So the General Assembly and the Wicomico County delegation might be completely in support of legislation, but if we're not getting the local support, it makes it very difficult to pass. So these are things that I'm used to seeing when it comes to alcohol policy. If we're passing local legislation that's widely supported, it makes it a 30-second bill hearing, and we're on our way. We've passed, the bill. This one, I might expect, we're here on a Friday. I might expect it to come up next week. So the members of the delegation Some might be doing this in person. I would like to be there in person with the Wicomico County Council, but some might be doing this virtually. But I mean, I expect that the subject will, it'll come up, and we'll listen, right? So our job in that particular venue is to listen and hear what those concerns are. In years past, before Bobby Culver's passing, we would have Saturday morning meetings at the Civic Center.
Right,
where
I
they would
saw
have,
you guys are on
yeah.
the agenda for County Council this week coming up.
That's right.
But I was wondering about that Saturday morning thing, which was always a great kind of a vet session. The county could ask for things, and there was a lot of good dialogue with that. So we're not going to have that?
Well, you see, what that was for the past 6 years, and surely before that, was I'll call it informal. It was more, let's sit and have a conversation, and it was done in a format round table, if you
Right.
will. So we're bouncing ideas back and forth, and at some point we might talk about what my legislative priorities are, things and bills that I want to bring forward. The fact that we're going to show up at a session of the county council is new, because that's not normally how this is done. It's done as an act of the county executive.
Right.
And so the county council now is saying, here, we're going to have this meeting. It doesn't surprise me necessarily because of the change, and so it also doesn't surprise me because Wicomico County does and should need to indicate to the delegation their concerns, their legislative priorities, and if it's like any, I represent 4 counties, so we've had these meetings in all other counties but Wicomico, and so these meetings are not unique and they're not unusual, and so I'm looking forward to that. We went a long way around on the Horizon tax credit.
Right.
So
fine.
I know the city of Salisbury, I believe, is supportive.
They've passed it. The county's considering it.
So
Yeah.
this would be something that on Tuesday.
Right.
That's sort of their one shot to, let's talk about it and go from there.
So your District 37B, I don't know how you were able to cover this thing. Your range is so wide. It goes way out there into Talbot County, St. Michael's, all the way out to the end of the island there, and through Dorchester and Wicomico. How are you able to cover such a wide range of territory? I mean, when this district was designed, no one ever imagined someone from Wicomico would be one of the representatives,
Yeah.
because it's so much of a mid-shore kind of district.
Well, it's cool that you're asking me that, because that's maybe one of the questions you asked me when we first had an interview when I was first elected. And early on, the job was to introduce myself to the community. I had to win election, especially in Talbot County, because half of my district is 2 counties over. So, as a business owner, there were fundamental things that people liked about my background, and surely in 2014, with the governor being elected as a pro-business business owner, people liked citizens who had a business background and knew how to budget and knew how to spend money wisely. So in those 7 years now, now that we're much further along, the job has been consistent. It has been very important work to learn the district, and I can say now with some degree of authority that most people in the district know who I am. They know how to get up with me, and they surely know my voting record now, and that becomes part of the hardest job, is to let people know where you stand. I mean, your word is your bond. Going into Annapolis, being effective, and for the Eastern Shore, a conservative voice matters. That doesn't matter whether you come from Talbot County or Somerset County or Cecil County, for that matter. But for the most part, the politics has been very enjoyable. This past year, not so much.
Right.
And certainly, social distancing and being an elected official don't mesh. I mean,
Right.
We want to be socially close, and we want to be connected to people, and doing it face-to-face, one-on-one, is the best way to deliver constituent service. And that's been the hardest part of this past 6 to 8 months, has been everything that I've learned, things that I've taken for granted, all of a sudden change. We're on the television doing Brady Bunch. I mean,
Right.
it's
Right.
That's simply not a easy way to conduct business in a political sense, in a people sense, and having to learn that has been challenging.
I have to ask you about your future, because when Bob Culver passed in July, I wrote a story and made a list of possible successors. I put your name on the list. I think at the time you told me that you really weren't interested in that, but in being county executive. But a lot of people told me they thought you should be county executive, that you would be a good pick. Is that anything that has interested you going forward? It seems like we've got this weird situation where the county council's back in charge. We have an acting county executive. It's, I think, certainly not what the people who made the county charter wanted to happen in a situation like this. But any thoughts about you ever becoming county executive?
Well, believe I'm an effective business owner and an effective executive, whether it's a company that has 32 employees or whether you're a county, which is a business in its own sense, a few thousand employees. The job remains the same: being a good listener, being a good leader, making tough decisions, and on its face, I would be very effective at that job. I think I could certainly sell myself as an executive. I would simply remind folks that were thinking that I would be a good candidate that I took the oath of office when I was elected in my second term, very seriously. The governor gave us a citation, hand-signed, all of us in the General Assembly, reminding us that we were elected to a 4-year term to end basically in 2022, and to discharge those duties in a honorable fashion. I take that oath of office extremely seriously.
How can people get a hold of you if they want to tell you what they think you should be doing in the next session? How can they reach you?
Well, I'm going to give you my cell phone number, and we've done this before, but it's the best way, and it's 443-359-0911, and my my email address is christopher.adams@house.state.md.us. People should know that my cell phone doesn't ring often. So when we give out the phone number, whether it's me or Carl or anybody else, that when we do get calls, they end up being very serious, important calls. And if somebody's hurting right now, unemployment and needing relief, or there's some frustrations, if you're a business owner, and I know I was one of these who really didn't understand Maryland government well enough to know what we can do as a state, picking up the phone call and calling me and saying, here, I need help. Hopefully people understand in this world we live in right now that the government is there for them, and the way that it is best served is on the ground, closest to the people. The House of Delegates is the people's chamber. I'm one member of 141 whose job it is to try to be the voice for the people. Please feel free to make a phone call. It's more important that you do that than to not and go through more pain than's necessary, because we can be helpful.
He's Chris Adams. He's a delegate for District 37B, Wycomico County, and we're thrilled he had time to be with us here today. Thanks so much for coming in.
Greg, thanks again for having me.
Thank you. I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper, another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.